Hello and welcome to our second roundtable podcast from the Centre for Contemporary Art, Derry Londonderry. I'm Catherine Hemmelreich, CCA's director, and I'm very pleased to introduce artists Janie Doherty and Locky Morris, and writer, editor and researcher Joanne Laws. Nothing But Windows is a new body of work by Janie and Locky, commissioned for CCA's project space, visible from the windows of Artillery Street, as well as a series of short videos appearing on social media. I invited the artists to work with the space after seeing their earlier collaboration entitled Bend in the River. In Nothing But Windows, Janie's disembodied arm moves across the screen, following the fissures and lines of peeling paint on the Granshaw windows, a stone's throw from the Foyle River. Layers of landscape and time flicker in and out of focus in the duration of the piece, compounded by the physical windows of CCA, reflecting the historic city walls and the changing skies. Janie Doherty is a movement-based artist from Derry Londonderry and currently living in Belfast. She studied dance and has worked as a dance facilitator, a performer and creator, more recently moving to work in the visual arts. Janie's work focuses on vulnerability as strength, and she experiments with storytelling, film, sound, and live performance. She was part of the Freelance Foundation programme 2018-20 and is currently collaborating on several projects with Una Doherty, Locky, and Alessandra Salesia. Locky Morris was born in Derry Londonderry, where he continues to live and work as an artist and musician. He has exhibited widely, first coming to international prominence in the 1990s. His immediate environment provides a persistent, recurring focus for his practice that takes form of photography, found objects, installation, text, sound, and video. And he also posts daily to Especially Everything, an Instagram account that has become a form of parallel practice. And you can find links in the descriptions to this podcast and other information about the artists. Our final guest is Joanne Laws, based in County Leitrim, a member of the International Association of Art Critics and a regular contributor to various art publications, including Art Monthly, Art Review, and Frieze. Joanne is editor of the Visual Artist News Sheet, Ireland's main printed publication for the visual arts, where she commissions new writing for an Irish arts readership. She also manages the Sculptors Society of Ireland's publications archive, which extends back to 1980. Among other professional commitments, Joanne currently serves on the board of directors of Leitrim Sculpture Centre and is programme extern for the Fine Art Department at Sligo Institute of Technology. Enough from me. Welcome everyone, and over to Janie, Locky and Joanne.
Brilliant. Thank you, Catherine, for the introduction. And also thank you for inviting me to join Locky and Janie in discussing their exciting new project. I suppose before we enter into dialogue about the actual work, it might be worth just outlining how the collaboration came about and whether you two have worked together before in any capacity.
Yes. Hello, Joanne. Hello, Locky. The first time me and Locky worked together was last year in the middle of the pandemic. I had been invited to create a small new work with Maiden Voyage Dance Company, who are based in Belfast. And the artistic director, Nicola Curry, invited 8 dance artists to collaborate with an artist of their choice. And before that, I guess I had just been very aware of Locky's work and impressed by him. And it was a nice coincidence because he started a little dialogue with me about another project I was on with a music video. He messaged me about a dance solo and the colouring in the video, and we ended up having a discussion about that. And then I said, well, it's a good timing actually, because I've been asked to create a new small work by Maiden Voyage, and I'd love to collaborate with you. And before that, we'd never really spoken, so it was a gamble in the middle of a pandemic, not knowing each other, to try and come together and see what we would create. And it was a very nice surprise getting to know each other. And, you know, the world still felt quite weird at that point. And even when we went for a walk, we were very just aware that we hadn't socialized with anyone else or met any new people. So it was a really strange one, you know, to meet a new friend in a pandemic and also do some kind of art collaboration. It was like, yeah, under unusual circumstances. Would you agree, Locky, that first time?
Yeah, that sums it up neatly. It's good. Yeah.
So I suppose to speak briefly about your individual practices and your working methods, Janie, you have described yourself as a movement artist with a background in dance. So I was wondering, I suppose, how you're situating yourself within the visual arts, and whether it's important for you to kind of differentiate between disciplines or not, and kind of defining a discourse for your practice.
It's such an interesting question about what discipline I am straddling at the minute. I guess after studying a degree in dance and always being a real dancer and performer from a young age, being very dramatic and always, I naturally moved towards performance. And I think in my kind of 20s, I was discovering that improvisation was a big part of my interest, and creating spontaneous composition on the spot. That was really exciting. And I guess part of that is how to surprise myself in movement. And it has developed into feeling like my art practice is an extension of my life, and how can I incorporate anything I'm doing as a poetic action, or things that might be performative. That might be washing the dishes and filming myself doing that, brushing the backyard, singing a song, writing a poem. I've kind of feel like I freed myself from the shackles of it just having to be dance, and got more interested in recording stories of women that worked in the bakery in Derry, and delving into working with women and women as caregivers, and the flesh and the body and massage, and you know, it kind of it's exploded into all sorts of things. So movement based now, but also who knows, I could turn into a sculptor, Joanne.
Bring it on. That's excellent. And then, so Locky, I suppose your long-running artistic practices tended to include a lot of photography, which documents your everyday environment. And I suppose we can discuss the everyday in greater detail a bit later. But I think one thing that I notice is that a lot of the time these environments are kind of bereft of figures, with human presence often implied through detritus or subtle interventions within the landscape. And so it strikes me that there's the right amount of tension between your collaboration with Janie, just in terms of how your landscape compositions might accommodate a kind of animated human form. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think somebody commented one time to me that, you know, my output was kind of quite lonely, which really struck me. I never really thought about that. But then, you know, there are a lot of things going on, and I'm not completely conscious of it. And one of the ones, I suppose, I made a decision, some sort of decision, to not have any figures in it, because it was just it just complicated things in my head, really, I think. And I would have maybe had my young daughter with me quite a lot, and she's kind of a natural improviser, and she would have featured in it, you know, every now and then sporadically. But then she got a wee bit older, and then she wasn't as compliant with my. I didn't really give her instructions, which is really great. It's a bit like Janie. I didn't have to give any instructions. My daughter would just do stuff. I would maybe frame or just extract a few seconds that had some kind of strange otherness to it, that interested me. Janie did a few seconds of a promotion for a single, Jamie XX single. It just absolutely blew me away. I just thought, wow, there's something going on here. It was really striking and kind of, I don't know, stripped down in a way and full on, and it wasn't something that I had seen from her before. But I wasn't familiar with a lot of her work. I caught sight of her dancing in a pub about 8 years ago at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I just threw a drunken haze seeing this woman dancing. I thought, wow, I don't know, that woman there can really move, fantastic presence about her. So I kind of made a note of it way back, thinking, yeah, so maybe in this distant future, maybe I wasn't conscious of it, but you do something, but you'd think, yeah, I might be involved with doing something with her. I had a kind of flicker back then. Yeah, the figure thing is, yeah, I wasn't sure how it would work, and it was a bit of it's always a risk working with somebody and a bit of a gamble, but my Instagram thing is a kind of a gamble, or the things that I do every day is a bit of it's not a risk, but you just go out and you don't really know what's going to happen, and that's the joy of it. I'm working with Janie because she just, we just go out and then we'd set something up, or a scene, I don't know, an environment, kind of, because I do a lot of wandering, as you probably guess from my Instagram thing. So I know a lot of places, that maybe a lot of people don't go to. So we tried some things out, and Janie was just, it was great because we just sort of, we went to certain places, and then Janie would just go into it. I was just like, which is a kind of amazing for me. I'm thinking, wow, this is not work.
Well, so I suppose we could actually start discussing the work that you've actually made together. So you've undertaken a large body of, I suppose, research, which includes photographic documentation and short video clips, which we can discuss later. But maybe we could start with the work currently occupying the window in the project space of CCA. It's a photographic projection called Nothing But Windows. And so this moving image work depicts paint flaking off a window, which Janie kind of perpetually traces with her hand. Janie, maybe you could tell us something about the original site. Where was the window that you depicted? Does it belong to a derelict building in Derry?
Yeah, the windows are in Grantia, and they're connected to the old psychiatric hospital, and this certain building is unused. It's kind of, I think they built a new section of the building, so this particular part has just been kind of left sitting, and I guess we really stumbled across it from our wanderings. I really enjoyed, like Locky was saying, he goes out wandering, and for me, I just felt so fascinated at how many sites he held with like poetic potential. So that's why, speaking from the other side of Locky, saying, oh, it's great, I just spring into action, because he would take me to these sites and they were so rich. And this particular window is just absolutely beautiful. It seems like it's been painted, but then over time the paint has flaked and caused these deep cracks in the paint. So that's what you see in the work we've shared in the windows. And yeah, the Grantia and the psychiatric hospital is still used, and it's a fabulous place to support people. So we were really just investigating the kind of the unused buildings and the bits that were left behind, which have obviously a lot of narrative and hold a lot of memories. I'm kind of firm believer in the idea that the walls hold memories, or like what is a place, how does it have an embodied history, or so the idea of just emotional landscapes escaping into walls, and I'm interested in that, or the imaginary world of that, and how that can evoke a sense of movement in me and my histories and my connection to Derry, and without going too deep into the mental health epidemic, it has a huge role to play in Derry, and given the dense history of Derry. So we didn't really go into that side too much. We tend to leave, that all sits and resides in the work, of course, but what happens between me and Locky comes through the spontaneous, as opposed to
I know, I suppose in responding to the work, naturally we can tend to read the work and the title, Nothing But Windows, in the context of the ongoing pandemic as well, both in relation to public spaces and domestic realms, which are currently off limits due to COVID-19 government health restrictions. So there is that dual sense of confinement, I suppose, that people to some extent are trapped within their homes, and that visitors can't cross the threshold. We can only really engage through this kind of glazed veneer. I suppose I'm thinking of the news footage we've all seen of people visiting their elderly relatives and communicating through the window. So there is this sense of isolation, and the idea that the interior realm is very much off limits. And actually, we've no idea what's unfolding behind these walls. So, to my mind, what we're witnessing really is an unprecedented regulation of domestic space to some extent. And that makes me think that beyond these highly regulated chambers, a rogue and more chaotic realm will inevitably seep through, I suppose. And likewise, the closure of galleries and museums has in some ways brought about a temporary revival of art in the public realm, as institutions kind of reconfigure their programs by making use of outdoor spaces like windows or billboards or parklands. So I suppose engaging with the space of a window, what you're doing is you're actually activating multiple strands of viewing, from the layers of the old paint on the window frame to the moving image projection, and then the reflections produced by the panes of glass. So I was wondering, maybe I could ask you, Locky, are you concerned with creating veils between worlds? Is this a kind of reoccurring theme or interest in your work?
Yeah, it seems to be, but I try not to be too super conscious about it, to be honest, and when I'm out there responding to things, because it's when I do become conscious, and of some of the work in my work in the past, so when it's become too conscious, or too kind of, here's what I am doing here, and I need to do that, and here's you need some kind of parameters to work within, but I tend to be really boring, to be honest, so that's the fundamental thing. And very often when I'm doing the Instagram thing, or doing my daily thing, it happens on the way to somewhere, or it happens on the way back, or, it doesn't really happen when it's meant to, when you've structured a bit of time. I'm just going to go here now and make some art down by the sea. You might happen in the lane or the car, or, by chance. So it's taking a long time to prepare myself for that sort of situation, or that kind of way of working. But yeah, I don't consciously think about it too much, to be honest, the veil thing, but it's there. It is there, I have to look at it again, more closely. It is akin to painting, it's some abstract painting or whatever it is. I'm kind of doing it in a three-dimensional outside world. And I'm not really sure what I'm up to a lot of the times, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that.
Well, I suppose another thing I wanted to ask you kind of relates to the window as a framing device, which kind of obviously heavily relates to photography and film. So the idea of the window as a kind of viewfinder or a mechanism for framing the photographic composition. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking, I guess, in terms of, I suppose if you think in art historical terms, you can think of the relationship between the viewer and the thing that they're looking at, traditionally known as the gaze. But there's also art historical baggage around the relationship between the viewer and the landscape. And that's kind of constantly been redefined since Romanticism. And so this dynamic of the window also becomes a bit more complex in the digital age, because the window is potentially standing in for the screen, to the extent that nowadays almost every artwork has to somehow disclose its position in relation to the screen. And I suppose I was also thinking of an exhibition of yours, Locky, a few years ago at the Nocturne Gallery that was called Stop Looking at Photographs. And it explored the materiality of photography and the mechanisms of display. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if any of this resonates with you. I mean, is the window a frame? Is it a microcosm? Is it a viewing mechanism? Is it a framing device?
Yeah, for this project, we were doubt, and we knew that we were going to do something in the windows, and Janie started doing these kind of movements. I thought, well, there's something here, and then bam, this could resonate in all kinds of ways with the layers of the windows and the framing. It's all there, the frame, but I don't really talk about it in my head too much. You kind of, it's there. All them kind of layers and art historical references are there, and but then you hope that there's something else there.
I wanted to ask you both about place. So obviously, with the work you're presenting in CCA, as you've already mentioned, a lot of the images and film clips were taken in various locations around Derry. And because you're both from Derry originally, you obviously know this place intimately. You know the specifics of its built environment, its layered histories and so on, which you've already mentioned. Again, I'm reading the work in the contemporary current context. So I'm thinking about travel restrictions in relation to the pandemic, and the idea that our immediate environment has become ever more knowable because of the mundane kind of repetition of our daily routes. Yes. And so I'm also thinking as well, in these current circumstances, I definitely think that because of this, that there's a reevaluation of place happening and what it means within the kind of global context. So our streets are temporarily empty ghost towns. I mean, I was even thinking about the town where I live, which is quite a busy town. I was thinking it's become like, at one stage it felt a bit like a wasteland or a kind of dystopian or post-apocalyptic landscape. And of course, the idea of urban wasteland does resonate with like the post-industrial landscape, the post-conflict landscape. But I'm also finding that lately, in my dreams, I'm actually walking the streets of places that I know really well that maybe I miss a lot and that I can't visit. So there's almost this kind of like subconscious astral projection that's happening where obviously there's undertones of like nostalgia and homesickness as well. So I suppose I'm thinking about these sort of vignettes of moving image, and I'm curious about how you selected the sites. I mean, you've already mentioned, Locky, that you do a lot of wandering. So I'm just wondering, do you set out with firm plans for working in a specific location around the city, or was it more kind of a process of energetic feedback where you just wandered until you came across interesting places on the fringes?
I suppose when you're set up, you're going to work with someone. It's a bit more not charged exactly, but it's a bit more right. I am now. We have got to produce something here at some level. You've got to. So I would have maybe 2 or 3 places that I've got in mind for that there, depending on how I really, for myself, and it's depending on how I feel. Really is how I feel physically, kind of thing. What do I feel like doing? It's kind of a strange thing. And you got a couple of ideas of where to go, and then on the way there, I was joking. I'm not joking, but on the way there, something happens along. I think there was one day where we were working on that. Do you remember, Janie, on that on the fence kind of thing? And then as we were wandering down the road, we just kept improvising the whole way along the road. And there's people standing watching, and Janie's so self-conscious. It's brilliant because I am pretty self-conscious,
Yeah, we ended up finding a red car door that had been ripped off and left at the side, and then a rainbow came out into the river behind this car door. It was just like, you could not plan it. Yeah, there are more people out walking and I guess wanting to be outside and have a change of scenery. So we were encountering in places you might think that would be quiet, and Derry people are just get out, get for a walk by the river. And so there was lots more people around. I was leaving the sites and the places more up to Locky because I know that's his niche specialty, and I was kind of being brought along on this journey of discovering these locations. And then I guess for me I was feeling what it triggered in me. What did I want to do here? Was it inspiring? How did it make me want to move? Do I want to drape myself over that red car door? Do I want to do a headstand in a forest? So, that's where I just can be present and enjoy myself and do the thing that I enjoy doing is improvising. And then, and that becomes the nuggets of tasty material that is, what is this? Where are we? And what is this?
I mean, we had, at the start, general discussions about the lockdown and COVID and, and what kinds of things we talked about ideas and concepts as well. It's not like, we already had kind of discussions like that, maybe a few months back, so it wasn't like we were just coming completely improvising. There was kind of maybe at the back of our minds, we had things, but they were parked, they were there. You knew they were there, but it wasn't, they weren't super conscious, you weren't super conscious of them when you were actually doing when we were doing the thing,
But they seep in. I think we'd be talking that much, Locky. We would just be sitting talking for hours and eating together and drinking tea together and, talking about all the outside influences and things. So then when we go and do it, we trust they're all there. It's seeped in, but yeah.
Janie, maybe I could ask you about the role of colour and costume in your work. In terms of the sensory effect on the viewer, there's something quite startling about seeing something suddenly really colourful begin to move within a tonally muted scene. So maybe you could just outline the use of bold colours and whether a kind of storytelling or narrative impulse actually informs your desire to use a range of costumes and props.
Yeah, I love that question. That's a great question. I love colour and being playful with costume, and I'm talking about costume as like everyday outfits. I would say, what costume do I want to wear today? I don't feel like there's like loads of trusted evidence and scientific research that colour definitely has an effect on mood and emotion. And I've always been drawn to kind of, being inventive and playful with colour in what I wear. So that naturally seeps into performance and dance and wanting to feel comfortable when you're moving and wanting to feel like you've got the right thing on your body that's sitting well or something. But what was I going to say?
You spoke about emotional dressing last time.
Yeah.
Women and armour.
Yeah, putting on your armour and wanting to feel colourful, wanting to feel strong, wanting to feel powerful, and what's the thing that you want to put on your body. Some days you do just want to wear black and you feel nice in black. Some days you want to wear, red shoes. So with Locky and with working outside, I was just bringing a whole heap of things. I didn't know what that I wanted to wear, and so I wanted to bring loads of options because I want to feel free with having all of everything there. And sometimes it doesn't work. It depends on where you are. I done a project with Big Telly years ago that I created called Urban Body, and I would just go out wearing really colourful things and place myself in the public and see how they reacted. And that always stuck with me because people in the street are like, wow, what are you doing? And you're just wearing yellow trousers and a red top. But it lights people's faces up when you see someone in a bright color. They're just astounded. They're like, what are you doing? Like, are you a clown? And you're like, no, I'm just wearing my normal clothes. But if you're acting out of the ordinary, if you're acting in any way poetic and in a place where you're supposed to be, acting, in a normal way, then that can blow people's minds. So I'm playing on the verge of like, what am I pushing with my color, and what do I feel like? There was a beautiful German Swiss woman who taught me in university, Ursula Leubli, who set up Echo, and she's passed away now years, but she said to me, Janie, you just have this way of playing in the line between real life and dance. And that always stuck with me, and that stuck with the work that I'm doing with Locky. It's like, what's the line of what real life is and what's dance, and how can you play on this cusp? And that comes into what you're wearing too. Is it a costume or is that your wardrobe? What is it? So emotional dressing and clowning comes into play without.
Maybe we could actually chat a bit about the moving image clips that you have. I think one of them features a bus stop, which I guess in itself is a man-made structure associated with transience and suspension. But I mean, it also kind of resonates with the cube and art history. And for me anyway, I think of when you think of painting and the kind of geometric structures that painters like Francis Bacon used to kind of have within his paintings to isolate or entrap his abstract figures, or at least kind of set them within a designated arena or stage. So I think in one of the video clips, you've got your two hands visible on the top of the partition. Another one, there's a kind of a flailing arm that comes, and it's an animated element that comes down below the partition. And then one of the other films that I saw, there's a kind of startling intrusion of an arm that kind of bursts in and out of the shot. So I was wondering if we could chat a bit about the arm and the hand, and just this idea of an disembodied arm and the kind of involuntary twitching, maybe as a signifier of life, maybe something coming alive, or maybe the last movements of a dying creature. I actually did some research a few years back about the rituals surrounding the Irish wake, and there were lots of stories about fresh corpses apparently moving or twitching in the dimly lit arena of the 19th century wake house. So there's also, with this kind of autonomous limb, I'm wondering if there's something like supernatural or kind of gothic happening. The idea of like being possessed by otherworldly forces or seances or witchcraft or voodoo or other kind of ritualistic practices. But definitely there's also, I mean, I have the video clip in front of me here, and it definitely does make me think of Kristeva and the abject body, and just the idea that we're kind of like repressing unspeakable forces that linger inside our psyche. But there's also the idea of like dismembered arms and the idea of horror or science fiction. I mean, you could think of like the scuttling little creature in the Addams Family, or you could think of, do you remember like the video nasties in the 90s where there might be like experimental limb transplant that used to transmit the thoughts and characteristics of its previous hosts. So there's undertones of the ritualistic body, the medicalized body, the abject or monstrous body, each with their own kind of boundaries. So I'm wondering if any of this is resonating with you. Like, what I know we spoke about this before, so I wanted to ask you just about the significance of hands and arms for you, and maybe there's some symbolism there.
So when you're dancing and when you're on stage, the audience get to see your whole body, and there's no hiding. They're going to see all of you in one piece there and then. And I guess moving into a more experimental place with my work and working with Locky, is the fun thing is with film, you get to chop up the body in sections. You get to telescope, not literally, but you get to telescope in on a focus point. And to me, that's like being in a playground, because it is a bit more new to have this realm of what do we want our focus to be, and what body part is drawing us to zoom in and see the details of. And so when you're talking about the dismembered arm and those references, I'm thinking about those clips and thinking, God, we really have just got an arm and a hand. And I hadn't really given that too much thought before, but it's fascinating because it's poetic and it's comical, and it's got, I'm so delighted that it's brought up all those references, and that's fascinating, and that's what it can do. I guess for me, it's always been a fascination of the hands, and using your hands like real practical tools when you're dancing. I always teach you have to have practical hands to get up and down to the floor. You can't have wee soft flailing hands. They have to be like your tools. They have to be strong. You have 27 bones in each hand. They're very articulate. And what else do they do? And being a masseuse, I'm someone who is very hands-on, shall we say, ha ha ha. And so I'm wringing out the flesh of others, and I almost feel like I'm squeezing out tension. I'm squeezing out sadness from the fascia, from inside the body, like squeezing the flesh. And then I'm also interested in baking and making bread. So I'm wringing bread. And then in my dance, I'm always interested in articulating the hands, and the hands as poetic tools, I guess, is interesting to me. And for Locky, he, I think, maybe picked up on the fact that I am a very expressive, almost like an Italian, with my hands. And so that's what I can offer on that. Maybe Locky, there's other things.
Say for the hands piece with the and the front of the wire, there's kind of a wire framework. It's a layer wire framework. It took a while to isolate a certain section. I'd be isolating certain sections of film. I kind of look upon them as fragments, and I don't know if the fragment is the fixed. Almost like the painting itself. I remember the time we were in the bus stop there, or the smoking place. I'm thinking Francis Bacon thing was so. I'm thinking these look like Francis Bacon paintings, and it wasn't like something we set out to do. It's ordinary in a way, but it's not. And Janie's movements aren't particularly, what you'd call, maybe they are graceful, but not in a kind of a ballet type way. There's a I'm never really sure whether is this a fragment for a bigger project, or is this it? Is this is this doing enough here, or whether
I mean, for me, I'm reading the project and the imagery in the context of the pandemic. It's very hard not to do that. And I suppose we're also obsessed with like washing hands and all of that stuff. It's like subconsciously that's definitely in my head anyway as I'm reading it. But there's also the idea of like, it's impossible not to see the roving hands and not think about the communal loss of intimacy and closeness and touch, you know?
Yeah.
And so
I think I'm responding intuitively to a lot of that stuff, you know, and you know, and then the way it's framed or the things that's really attracting me that seem to be speaking to me almost like this is doing something to me, or and it's, you know, so again, it's not like super fucking conscious, but you're going, there's something here that's managing to say something that I don't exactly know what it is. I can't really pinpoint it, but it's interesting, and it's reflecting something back about the time, or the, you know, you sort of know, God, we're hitting on something here, you know.
I just wanted to ask, this is a bit of a random one, but I saw some graffiti recently that said after the plague came the Renaissance. So I was wondering if either of you had any thoughts about, I suppose, just the role of art in the collective process of mourning and healing, and maybe also, I guess, the role of artists in kind of like all of us reevaluating how we inhabit cities and urban space going forward. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
For me, yeah, no, it's a big one to think about. Art as a cleansing and as a statement of the time, you know, the intimacy of the hand and the dance and movement and art for me is a catharsis, and when I'm doing it, I have less anxiety in general and less fears, because it brings me into a present moment. And with movement and improvising, there's a catharsis and there's a cleansing and there's a letting go of all of the shit that you don't need to carry, because we do carry a lot of shit that we don't need. And we use this wee muscle in the top of our head, and we can become disembodied in a way from our thinking to our embodied selves, you know, and we being in our heads, to bring it in. I don't know if I'm even answering your question, but the role. Oh, am I answering your question?
I can't even remember what I think that was a bit of a wild card, that question. We could probably just skip it. I only have one more question left, so.
Do you know what though? I am so interested in this new phase, and you know, I think that artists in general are really resilient and adaptable, and this whole year has been a year of like, what is going on, and just try and still create art without a studio or collaborative connections. I'm interested to see what will come out of it, what will collapse, what will be let go, and what will be revealed. You know, I try to stay positive and hopeful about that, you know, even though it's been a year, like, so I watch with anticipation, hope, and in my own practice. You know, I'm becoming a mother. I am a mother. You know, I'm 5.5 months pregnant. How will my practice change? How can I be embodied as a woman, mother, artist, maker, community facilitator? You know, as women holding space, caregiving, doing all of the jobs all of the time. Can me and Locky bring that into our practice? There's a child. There's, you know, so of course I feel hope. I'm pregnant, so that comes with it. So you have to think of your own mortality. I can't die anytime soon. I'm bringing a life in. You know, it really has put a grounding, like a rooting thing. So that's a bit off topic, but just things that I'm interested in personally, and continuing forward in a real expansive, opening way with it all.
to the last question that I wanted to ask both of you, and it was really just in terms of, I guess, there has been some innovation during the pandemic in terms of the presentation of art, but this period has been mostly defined by virtual encounters mediated through online platforms. And I suppose at the start of the pandemic, I was kind of quite opposed to online exhibitions. But I've gradually warmed to the idea to some extent, just because there's been a certain amount of exhibitions that were successfully mediated online. But it strikes me that the most effective artworks for digital viewing are the ones that have been made specifically for that mode of circulation, not the ones that end up there through necessity. Because definitely some artworks do fall flat when they're experienced online if they weren't intended for that. And obviously, the direct encounter with live performance is not currently possible. So we're engaging more with documentation. So I was wondering if either of you had any thoughts on the circulation of your current project or even your previous work through websites or maybe social media. Locky, you previously mentioned Instagram as an outlet for your work. How does that function for you generally?
Yeah, it's become a thing, I guess. It's become a thing in the last 4 or 5 years, maybe nearly 5 years. So I kind of approached it to see if I could make it as a work, I guess. I wasn't really sure at the start whether it was going to pan out that way, but I tried to, so I'm using that as a kind of a work, a daily thing they do. It sort of ties into the way I work. So yeah, I can see me making more films and photography, and probably less in the studio. I'll probably drifted from the studio. Even before the pandemic, I was kind of becoming studio. I have a great studio, but I can't really find that I can't associate the studio with torment. I really do, and it's really negative thinking on my part. Really, it's just that's a fault, and that's probably one of it. It's just I associate it with too much being on my own, and I don't know. So I suppose the online thing kind of connect. You do make connections with people. There's no doubt about it. But whether sometimes the quality of that maybe isn't as.
So there's the connectivity and the visibility, but you also maybe use your Instagram account as your working archive in some ways.
Yeah. It's like it is like a kind of sketchbook, like an on the moment sketchbook, and you're sharing things. And I remember to start going, God, this is a really precious photograph. I can't put this out. Put this out, and that kind of made me rethink all that. That kind of that way of thinking. So yeah, it is an online archive. Yeah, and it's in some ways some things on there that I'm really, really proud. That I feel good about. Thinking, what, that's a good thing there. I'm really happy I put that out there. That's as good as people say. Well, what sort of work do you do? I'd have no hesitation going, have a look at the Instagram. It gives you a quicker view into what I might be up to, or the way I think, or so. I have no not snobbery towards that, but I've obviously done gallery exhibitions and public art, but it's the Instagram thing, that project that I have, not particularly, well, I suppose it is Instagram, but it's has been a liberation for me, I guess.
I want to thank you both very much for your time today, and to thank Catherine at CCA for inviting me and having us talk about your new project.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been lovely to speak with you, and great to delve into what it is we're doing. So thank you.
It's been great. Thanks very much, Joanne. Really, really great. Thank you,
care.
Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Janie, Locky and Joanne, for joining us. Nothing But Windows is on view from Artillery Street at CCA until the 1st of May 2021, with additional footage on Instagram at CCA DLD and especially everything at Locky Morris Artist. This roundtable is made possible thanks to the support of Arts Council of Northern Ireland, Derry City and Strabane District Council, and the Art Fund.